originating from the podcast studio inside FAM 360's headquarters in Atlanta, Georgia. This is the Above and Beyond Leadership Podcast. The Above and Beyond Leadership Podcast is designed to encourage, equip, and inspire our audience through a combination of inspirational stories and real-life experiences shared by other successful and skilled leaders in a variety of vocations. We hope that the Above and Beyond Leadership Podcast empowers each one of us to step out, step up, and ultimately thrive as leaders. Now here's our host, Mr. Matt Maloney.
Hello and welcome back, everyone, to the Above and Beyond Leadership Podcast. I am your host, Matt Maloney, and excited to continue my conversation with this episode with my dear friend, Andy Cook. If you didn't catch last week's episode, be sure to check it out. You can go to our podcast webpage and URL to check out last week's episode. On our last episode, Andy talked a little bit about just leadership and his leadership philosophies and some of the really cool things that they're doing at Promise 686. And if you get a chance, check out Promise at promise686.org/FAMS, FAMS. Welcome back, my man.
Oh, it's good to be back.
Good to see you. Yep. So this week on the podcast, we're going to talk a little bit about leadership in the home. Most of us across the globe have to lead our lives in some way. And sometimes that's a family life if we're married. And if we're married and we have children, it's an even bigger responsibility.
Sure. Yeah.
And that responsibility of probably anybody that I know is probably no larger and no greater than it is with you and your house. So tell me just a little bit about the Cook family and, just tell me about the family. Yeah.
Oh, well, I just think about a moment that kind of frames it really well. Actually, from the perspective of my parents, I've got some older children now, and so I can even start to think, what would it be like to be a grandparent? So let me give you the grandparent perspective on my family. There was a day in the fall of 2015 when my parents met 8 new grandkids in one day. So my sister had adopted 3 children through the foster care system, she and my brother-in-law. So my parents went down and met them kind of in the heart of Atlanta. They came up 85 and over toward our way, just outside of Atlanta, and met my 5 newest children that were part of my family. And when you make a choice to adopt and
so to interject, 5 from you and 3 from your sister.
Yeah. So they had
day.
8 new in one day. I don't know what that did. That was actually about a month and a half ahead of Christmas. So I'm sure they immediately went back to the drawing board on what Christmas presents looked like there. So those are 5 of my newest children in my family. We have 10 kids. The age span is from age 8 up to 22. And our family really formed, if you went back X number of years, there are 3 families that become our family. There was a family in Ethiopia, a family actually not far from here in Roswell, Georgia, and then a family that was mine, and I said that was past tense, in Peachtree Corners, Georgia.
Okay.
And who they were and who we are together now, very much linked, right? Same people, but we're all different. And I think there's a mindset with adoption sometimes that's, everybody came and they became yours. Well, if only it worked that way, right? Right. That's not how life ever works. No. You blend into each other. So, we are 12 strong, my wife and I, and then 10 kids. That's us.
That's incredible. Congratulations, by the way. I will tell you, I've spoken to many of our friends and, in our circles that we run around in, and just, you're definitely an inspiration to a lot of people. You're such a great dad. Your wife is such a great mom. And I think that, just how you've, not only do you, talk the talk and in your organization and what you're trying to do, but you're living it out in your personal life with your children. And you're just a great dad. I want to affirm you in that. So
thanks. It takes a great sense of humor to be a father to a large number of children.
No, it does.
They have to laugh with me or at me all the time. With adoption, there's always a sense of tragedy. Like let's start with tragedy. Sure. Comes before there's hope in regard to what a child experiences. And so there are multiple lost parents around our family.
Yeah.
And out of that, sometimes it's hard to laugh, right? That's there's nothing funny about the pain that children experience that puts them in a position where they need to be adopted. But on the other side of that, there has to be laughter. And I remember the day that we brought the sibling set of 5 to be our children. We had met them on a few different occasions, and they arrived at our house, and we're out front. And we've got the front door decorated, big welcome, all these things. And the kids go running in. At that point, we've got a 2.5-year-old, 11-year-old, 12-year-old, 13-year-old, and 17-year-old are the newest additions. And the 13-year-old girl kind of holds back for whatever reason in the car. I don't know. She's more particular, probably actually was grabbing her luggage rather than just running in. And this is that moment. I don't, if there's a Hallmark movie moment, this should be it. And the dog starts barking, and this daughter looks to me and says, "Dad, did you get us a dog too?" It was the neighbor's dog. And I, in that moment, I said, "Yes, I did." And she said, "Really?" And I said, No. And so there's always a little bit of space just to laugh. And I hope they don't take me too seriously, because I don't know. You're kind to say I'm a good leader in the household. I don't know enough of what I'm doing. If people don't laugh with me at times to really make it through this thing.
Well, there's no book out there. Well, actually, there are plenty of books out there on parenting, but there's no book out there that's, tried and true and saying this is exactly how you should do it, because God's created each of us uniquely, and each of your kids' personalities are different, and therefore they require a different response from mom and dad. And I'm learning that every day.
Yeah.
And as you go from, I was talking about this with my wife, I think it was probably over the summer, and I had just gotten back from a camp that I took our oldest daughter to out in California. And they talked about the different stages of parenting, and specifically fathers with their daughters or their sons, because that was what the camp was focused on: fathers and daughters and fathers and sons, and just going from those different phases. And they kind of broke it down into 4 phases: caretaker in those earlier stages, and then cop, and then what was it? Consultant? No,
coach.
Coach.
Yeah.
That's right. Coach and then consultant. Thank you.
Yeah.
And moving from, we've got children where you're different ages in your home. So you're in the consultant phase, some you're in the coach phase, some you're in the cop phase, some you're in the caretaker phase. And balancing those is a challenge, and it's a learning experience for us as leaders in the home every day.
Actually, one of my children, just due to the trauma he had experienced in his life, took about a 6-week period and did wilderness type therapy.
Yeah.
And it was set up really interesting. They had 3 spheres. And the first kind of sphere of your influence was one where you really had next to no control. And it was modeled around this idea of early childhood. You don't have the ability to do so much because you don't really have the wisdom. You don't have the level of responsibility where you can take on much more really than the bare minimum, and things would be done for you. And therefore you would be controlled. And then they would graduate in the course of this wilderness. They're hiking, right? They're in canoes. They're going all over the place into sort of this hybrid next sphere, where in this next sphere, they've got a sense of, hey, you can control some of your own destiny, but you still got to play by the rules, right? Yeah. And then the third sphere, so we're kind of moving through our adolescence into early adulthood, is, you know what? Do it yourself. So you build the fire, you pack up the tent. If you left something at the last site, hey, it's on you. It's on you. So you've been given more responsibilities, yet you also, of course, receive the consequences of those. Yeah. And those phases of parenting are not just relevant at home in our leadership.
No.
Not that we would ever treat colleagues in the workspace like children, but recognizing that there's a developmental process that happens even with a new position, where we teach and we instruct and we're heavily involved, but we intentionally have to step back a little and then a step back a little bit more to create that autonomy for people really to flourish. So much of what leadership looks like at home actually instructs me in a different way about what it looks like at work.
Of course it does, because it's all interconnected. Yeah. I mean, really, it is.
We're the same humans.
We're the same human beings. And I used to try to kind of separate, and although there is a distinct separation between home life and work life and certain things, but in terms of me and how my personality is and how I attempt to lead at home and attempt leadership here in the workspace, it's all connected. And I see oftentimes when I'm not doing well at home, I might not be doing well in the workplace. When I'm doing well in the workplace, I start to do better at home. So Tell me a moment, or maybe just overall, just one thing that you're most proud of in your life, your personal life.
It's seeing a child move from death to life. And I've seen it in multiple children where I met them frozen, deeply saddened, and seeing what could happen next, even when it was hard to believe there could be a next. One child in particular sat across the table from us as we pondered what the best future would look like for him. It was an amazing scenario where 4 churches came together to figure out how to help a family of 5 children whose mother had just passed away, whose father was out of the picture. And a handful of families had stepped up, and we were the only ones that had the capacity or belief. I'm not sure we had the capacity, but the belief that we could take all 5 of the children. And this 2-year-old sat, frozen in the lap of the woman who'd cared so well for him. And he was so hurt by the loss of his mom and so confused by where he was and this sense of being in transition that, of course, he had no words for. And when he then sometime later came into our house, he was the sort of child who didn't cry. And the most haunting image in the world of what's kind of called internationally orphan care, we refer to something like it as foster care in America, but internationally the word orphan is used more. The most haunting image is that of Eastern European orphanages where there's no sound, where people have stopped, where children have stopped crying because they learn nobody's coming. And that picture played out in my home for the first 3 to 6 months with this little one. He just didn't have a voice, no reason to have a voice. He is so in your face now. He is so alive. He is so free.
Gosh,
there's freedom in him, in his smile, in his aggressiveness. When he joined our family, a biological sibling of his is about 3 weeks difference in age, and that bio child used to dominate the newest member of our family, and that is totally different now. It works as brothers should. They're messing with each other constantly, but he is alive, and there's a passion. And there's a sense that his voice matters to his parents because he's been picked up and held and loved. And that, that's an accomplishment in my life.
That is the ultimate accomplishment.
I've been a part of. I can't say I did all that work, but I've said yes a few times along the way and tried to do it.
Bringing light to his life, which was essentially filled with darkness in so many different ways. And he didn't know any other way until you guys, took him into your family. That's incredible. Congratulations on that. Life motto, do you have one? Quote, scripture, creed, something that you and your family live by, you live by? Tell the audience here.
I've become a word of the year kind of guy, so I'll tell you where I am this current year. The word is truth. And the quote is, if in doubt, tell the truth. Mm-hmm. And that's tongue in cheek because that ought to be our first response. But I think sometimes we get spun up in trying to craft how things will look and how they'll feel to others, whether that's work or at home. And you know what? What if we just told the truth, the whole truth? Like didn't try to make it sound good.
Yeah.
That's something that I am trying to live by more and more and more. Not to craft the story, but just let the raw details sit, and then let's move through them together.
That draws people into you, though, right? It draws you tell the truth. I mean, as parents, right? And I struggle with this all the time, trying not to craft something that's too polished for my kid because my kids aren't going to hear it. But if I can bring humility to the situation, if I can bring authenticity to the situation with my daughter, my son, whether it's a teaching moment or whatever it might be, but that truth, as you talk about, if in doubt, tell the truth, and it just lays it out there, and it just brings people closer, and it brings you and your child in this case, or your family member into the story. That's great. So all of us, have learned as we've grown. We all learn a lot of things over time. right? It's part of our maturation process, our sanctification process. And we all, when we were younger, we used to think our parents didn't know anything. I know a lot more than you do. Of course, as you get older and wiser, you look back, you're like, maybe my parents did know something. Maybe they were a lot smarter than I thought. But if you could go back and sit down with your younger self and spend an evening with your younger self, what would you tell him?
I'd probably sit down with that guy at about 22 and I would say, slow down. You have a road, there is a road ahead, and you don't have to so eagerly find the next step that you miss the lessons in the current step. I remember I started as an educator and I got into the school setting. I was loving the work I was doing. And about 3 months in, I went and I sat down with the principal and I said, all right, so what's next? And he looked at me and he said, well, Andy, you finish this year and then you start up next year and you do that for a semester, then another semester, and then you do that for another year. And then you can come and ask me what's next. But my mindset was there had to be something more. And to have a drive is a wonderful thing, but to miss the lessons along the way, we're going to be those people potentially who got somewhere without the character lessons and even some of the skills that we would have needed. I think, fortunately, I don't think that happened so much to me, but I probably could have enjoyed that time with less anxiety. I thought I had to move so fast. I don't. No. Didn't then, don't now.
And doesn't it seem like to you it gets life and that sense of urgency gets more and more with each generation, right? I mean, this current generation that's of maybe middle school, high school age, and where they're at, and everything is just so instant in your face with social media and instant gratification. And it's just shameful, really. And it doesn't allow us to sit back and think and live in the moment. And I am one of the world's worst at it. I really am. And I'm constantly thinking about the next thing versus living in the moment. And my wife shares that with me all the time. And thank the Lord, He put her in my life because she refines me in that and continues to share her wisdom in that, and it rubs off on me. But if I didn't have that my wife, life partner as my compass to kind of continue, I would continue that. So I think even as we grow wiser and older and we look back at that, we still have a tendency to fall back into our self. And that for me, it was the same as you. It was like, slow down. It's okay. You don't have to rush. Just live in that moment and learn in that moment.
And the gift of our presence is so meaningful and it's so impactful down the road, right? It's the relationships that were created along the way and the relationships we have with colleagues and certainly with our family. Those are the things that are deeply satisfying and deeply purposeful. If we're going to take on life together, if there's a mission to go after, it's going to have to be in strong relationship. And my rush is going to ruin relationship. And with ruined relationship, I actually won't accomplish that thing that I'm hoping to get to.
Yeah. Was there anybody in your youth, speaking of your youth and looking back and talking to your 22-year-old self, was there anybody in your youth that you could look to that kind of set an example? Maybe you didn't realize it at the time. Maybe you're now just recognizing it or recognize it as you become an adult, but who set a really good example of someone in leadership or who led well and you're like, wow, he or she or they, maybe it was a group of people, were really leading me well and taught me well?
I had a teacher and a coach who somewhere in early middle school said, I'm after this guy. I'm going to stick with him. Skip ahead 10, 12 years. He was at my wedding. Skip ahead beyond that. Actually, the first job I took in education, he helped open the door to. So it was somebody who was there for the long haul, who pursued me. He is actually coaching a few of my kids now.
Oh, he is?
At a different school, but coaching all the same. And so I think that person's commitment to stay in relationship was massive, right? Yeah. I couldn't keep introducing a new me to him over and over again and pretending the old me wasn't a part of me.
Yeah.
And the continuity of his relationship
Yeah.
pushed me to have some continuity in who I was developing as. So without a doubt, he's the one who stands out.
I think I talked about this in one of my other episodes because I believe one of their either children, I think was a teacher or something, but teachers, coaches, they are, I mean, they're the ultimate leaders, right? Mm-hmm. They're the ones that have the keys to leadership, to plant the seeds for future generations. And there's so many stories that I've heard about people who were impacted by a teacher or by a coach or someone who taught them something, who stuck with them through struggles or whatever it might be. But what a great call out and a great testament to that for you. Yeah. So that's good. So looking hopefully decades down the road, when you're gone and there's books written about the great Andy Cook.
That's a scary thought.
I know, I said the same thing. What do they say about Andy? Who is Andy? What do those books say about Andy Cook and who he was as a person, as a leader, as a man?
I hope this will be a believable answer. So right. This is a selfish lens on your question.
I'm taking note on this here, right. So get ready.
I hope that you are reading the stories of my children. I hope you're reading the story of Promise 686. I hope you're reading the story of thousands and thousands and thousands of churches that stepped up, and the people in those churches who rallied around kids, who provided a sustainable solution to a foster care crisis, which is my day-to-day work. That's what I hope you're reading about. But here's the part where before you're like, yeah, I don't believe you. I hope that I get like a mention. And it's like you have these separate stories, and this guy, Andy Cook, gets mentioned because he knew so-and-so, or he had a role in that. And only one random guy's like, I keep seeing this guy, Andy Cook. And somehow behind the scenes, without my name being on it, there is an effect that rallies ahead past just one generation into others. And I had some peace in throwing that pebble into the lake. That, to me, would be super cool. Not to have a book about me, but to be a piece of that many stories. That's what I'd love.
Andy Cook, you are a humble and servant father and a humble and servant leader and an inspiration to all. I loved having you here with us today. Thank you for sharing your quote unquote leadership chops, both with your family and on the prior episode within your organization. You're a wise man, and I'm glad to call you a friend. So
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for joining. Everyone, thank you for listening to the Above and Beyond Leadership Podcast. I hope you join us for our next episode. Until then, I wish you well as you aim to go above and beyond. Thank you.